Curious. In 1955, shortly after Disneyland opened its gates, a Mexican-style restaurant inside the park called Casa de Fritos faced a daily logistical headache. At the end of every shift, the kitchen staff were throwing away dozens of unused, stale tortillas. A salesman for the restaurant's supplier noticed the waste and offered a simple fix. He told the cooks to pull those stale tortillas out of the scrap pile, cut them into triangles, and drop them into a deep fryer. The cooks tossed the fried scraps in a basic seasoning and handed out to customers. Without any corporate approval or formal marketing strategy, these makeshift chips started flying out of the kitchen. A year later, Frito-Lay marketing executive Arch West was on a family vacation at the park. He stopped by the restaurant, tasted the recycled scraps, and immediately saw the potential for a nationwide product. West pushed his executives to scale up the operation. Frito-Lay moved production from the back of a theme park kitchen to their industrial plants, leading to the 1966 national launch of a plain, unseasoned chip called Toasted Corn Doritos. By trying to save a few pennies on discarded tortillas, a vendor accidentally laid the groundwork for a multi-billion-dollar snack empire. But those early toasted corn chips struggled to find an audience. Consumers in the American Southwest quickly complained that the chips were entirely too bland. Frito-Lay realized that traditional recipe tweaks were insufficient to save the product line. They needed to move away from simple cooking and embrace hard chemistry. The threat of commercial failure forced a transformation. The simple, upcycled tortilla was about to become the first modern, highly engineered processed snack. The solution arrived in 1972 with the release of the nacho cheese flavor. The recipe for this coating requires a massive list of nearly 40 separate ingredients, from cheddar cheese and whey to a litany of complex chemical additives. This chart illustrates the concept of hyperpalatability. It maps out a precise, engineered ratio where salt, fat, and savory umami flavors intercept perfectly to maximize the pleasure response in the human brain. To ensure that flavor hits you instantly, the dust relies on lactic and citric acids. These acids trigger your salivary glands, forcing your mouth to overproduce saliva and rapidly dissolve the seasoning. At the same time, chemical compounds like disodium inosinate and guanylate act as aggressive flavor boosters. They bypass the taste buds on your tongue entirely, sending signals that directly overstimulate the brain's reward centers. Then there is the cheese itself. When the specific dairy proteins in the seasoning break down during digestion, they release casomorphins, compounds that attach to dopamine receptors and produce a mild, literal neurological high. This iconic orange dust functions as a precisely weaponized chemical payload designed to hack human biology. The physical architecture of the chip plays an equally crucial role. Frito-Lay engineers specifically calibrated the density of the corn masa to generate a loud acoustic crunch, a sound our brains associate with freshness. This graph tracks a phenomenon called vanishing caloric density. It shows how the chip delivers a sharp, highly satisfying crunch in the first second, but physically dissolves in your mouth almost immediately after. Because the physical mass vanishes so quickly, your brain's satiation sensors never receive the signal that you are eating. You are consuming fat and carbohydrates, but your neurological caloric counter stays flat at 0. Your stomach fills up, but your brain thinks it's still hungry. This mismatch creates an involuntary repetitive loop where you continually reach back into the bag for the next bite. By short-circuiting the biological triggers that signal fullness, vanishing caloric density transforms the act of eating into a continuous neurological loop. Having perfected the physiology of the snack, the company's leadership turned their attention outward. To maintain market dominance, they needed to embed the brand completely into American culture. In 2006, they launched the Crash the Super Bowl campaign. Instead of hiring ad agencies, they invited everyday consumers to film their own 30-second commercials and compete for airtime during the biggest television broadcast of the year. The strategy transferred expensive production costs onto the fans, saving the company millions in development. The massive public voting process drove consumer engagement so high that retail sales jumped by 12% in a single month. They took that momentum and applied it to other brands. In 2012, they partnered with Taco Bell to engineer the Doritos Locos Taco, replacing a standard corn shell with a giant molded nacho cheese chip. Consumers flocked to fast food drive-thrus to try it. At the peak of its popularity, Taco Bell was selling 1 million of these orange tacos every single day. This specific crossover shifted the brand's identity, establishing the Dorito as a foundational culinary ingredient and a standalone flavor profile. The brand began as a literal theme park waste product, was engineered into an inescapable biological trap, and is now a permanent fixture of global culture.